a PowerPoint presentation and a human presentation, not very easily seen perhaps, but this is a portrait of Father John Bapst, about whom a lot of tonight will be focused upon, as it were, as I'm being focused upon here. Okay.
Still missed it.
So much for fatherly problems causing to daughters. Father John Bapst was born in 1815 in western Switzerland, in the Catholic region of that nation. He was the second of three children, second of three sons, born to what I would perhaps call a sort of upper middle class Catholic farm family. As a youngster, he tended to stand out from his peers in several ways. First of all, he was extremely intelligent and very curious to learn. Beyond this, he had a rather athletic quality, a rather basically optimistic view of the world, and in particular, for a young boy, maybe an 8, 9, 10, so person very much interested in religion. It was said, for example, that he would go out into the woods and preach to a kind of insensible woods audience, only trees listening, as he would invoke certain of the Catholic messages and doctrines. The custom of the day, at age 12, he went off to college, not unusual in those days. And he had determined that he aspired to become a member of the Society of Jesus, a Jesuit. And quite early in his, what we would almost perhaps call his secondary school, maybe up in the equivalent of a sort of a freshman, sophomore type of level, he continued to stand out and came to the attention of the Jesuits as, even though very young, a very promising presence for membership eventually in the line. He was considered the best student in his particular group, and he came from a background of advantage. He was very well mannered. He had a rather intellectually based sense of his faith. And so basically, he was admitted to follow into a Jesuitical education, which would take place, frankly, over a period of more than a decade, as he moved from a kind of what we call perhaps a high school secondary level up into a sort of collegiate level, and eventually into a sort of graduate level with a great focus upon theology, upon philosophy and history, where he stood out among his peers. Very scholarly directed was he. And eventually, rather early in his educational career, he was admitted into the Society of Jesus. And ultimately, in the last day of 1845, in Europe, he was ordained as a member of this society and a priest. And the following day, the first day of 1846, he celebrated his first Mass and directed his first service. However, in Switzerland, as in much of Europe, there were religious wars and strains, actually sort of the beginnings of what a very fascinating topic called the revolutions of 1848 that kind of swept the whole nature of Europe except for England. Well, the point of the matter was, Switzerland was much divided, and the result being that basically the Jesuits were expelled from Switzerland, and so Bapst finished his final educational career while teaching in Paris. But then, about in the last day of May of 1848, so we have him at age 33, comes a pivotal moment in his life. He was asked to go to see the superior of the college within which he was working as an instructor, as well as completing sort of his graduate studies. And his superior indicated that he was being sent to the United States. When he heard that, he was just flabbergasted, broke into tears after leaving his association, because he had never considered at all going into a missionary work for which he didn't feel accustomed. He had no particular attachment to the United States. He envisioned himself very much tied to the European continent, very much devoted to a sort of scholarly approach, as a number of the Jesuits are. Some of his colleagues said, why don't you go and try and protest, explain your reasoning? He said, no, the decision is made, I will follow it. And so immediately he left for Antwerp, Belgium, not even going back to see his parents. He would never see them again. He who in the morning of that day had envisioned basically a life close to his family and to the European Catholic faith, makes its way to Antwerp and sails from there on a ship known as the Providence, with significance, a very major historical movement. 43 other Swiss Jesuits come to America at the very same time. I understand there's a book now being written about the nature of their experiences and all. And on the Providence, an equal number of just secular people are being untied there. What normally would be a 29-day voyage took 47 days. And they arrived in New York City in July. As this was going on, another scene was occurring. At Holy Cross College in Worcester, Bishop John Fitzpatrick, the new bishop of Boston Diocese, was meeting with the superior of the Jesuitical Society in America from Maryland. And basically, the bishop indicated that he'd been receiving correspondence from the Native Americans in Old Town, Maine, who said that they wanted to have a black robe Jesuit sent to them, just as centuries before there had been Jesuits there. And so basically an agreement was made between the two that among them, Father Bapst would be sent to this new post. So Bapst arrives something like July the 18th, 1848, and by the 20th, he's on his way north, eventually arriving in Old Town, perhaps around August the 4th. The thing that's significant is, in manner and style, he's very much a scholar, very much a kind of non-physically dominating type of figure, not a brusque personality at all, but extremely intelligent, extremely devoted to his faith, and he can't speak a word of English, let alone the Penobscot language, the language of the Indians. So beginning in 1848, he starts out very quick in mind. I don't know if the picture shows it, but it is said that he looked very much like Ralph Waldo Emerson in terms of just physical appearance. But quickly he learns snatches of both the English and the Indian language and sets about his work. He, serving the Indians on what, I'm from Warren, what we call Indian Island, but in addition to that, serving as a missionary through much of at least eastern and central Maine. So he's much on the go among his various peoples and the like. He made some progress for his faith, mostly in terms of education of the young, but it was kind of an uphill battle in dealing with adults in the Indian tribes who were not particularly disposed to that. But Bapst, as a result, was dispatched in 1851 to Eastport to join 3 other Catholic missionaries who were located there. Partly the bishop wanted to reprimand the Indians for their not being overly receptive to the doctrines of Catholicism. And so Bapst comes in as the senior, actually the leader of the 4, and over the next several years quickly develops a great ability of being decisive in directing the people. He's very much a leader, very devoted was he. His people were very loyal to him. And again, I would remind you, frankly, that from Eastport, basically except for Catholic communities outside, served by Portland, in Augusta and Bangor, and Whitefield, which is the center out in western Maine, essentially these 4 had missionary service through much of the state of Maine. At a time when the interstate service was not very good, airplanes were not, it was a very difficult place in which to live. So you could imagine the kind of sacrifice and discipline needed to be successful there. Well, after about a year or 2, he made a recommendation to his superior in Maryland that the Eastport mission be divided in 2. The 2 of the priests remain in Eastport, 2 others should go to Ellsworth, 95 miles away. For reasons of geography and convenience and dividing up the conference, it was felt to be better. So in January of 1853, Bapst comes to Ellsworth, and establishes basically a residence that is over near the near Dean Street, near just this side of kind of where the it used to be the Shell station is, in that area, just this side. Ultimately, if you will, the chapel and the church are, I understand, are pretty much where that gasoline station is, as it were.